Hi all, I'm Jeanette Keynes from Jewelry Arts Inc. Today in the studio, I'm going to show you how to fuse together a beautiful 22 karat Acorn gold bead that we made using my Queen Puabi die formers, available at jewelryartstools.com right now. Ready? Mm-hmm. So we're getting ready to do some fusing of some beautiful beads. We have a lovely acorn that Susie made sitting there on its little trivet. And if you watched any of the videos before, you know, we sanded it, got it beautiful and level. We put a little nick in the end because remember, you always have to have an air escape. If you seal up air and heat it, it will explode. So contraindicated for any bead making. And yes, I have seen it happen. And yes, it does literally fly into the air. Somebody made a hollow bead and they put something around the ends and were soldering something and they just sort of didn't realize that they had covered the hole. You know what I mean? It can happen. You don't know, it can happen. Funny, but wrong. So we're not gonna let that happen to you. So, and we lined them up. We put a little G glue and lined them up together and it's been sitting there for a couple minutes. I got my kiln nice and hot. And you'll notice we've done our little tower of power because when you're fusing these seams together, the seam is like on the horizon and it does make it a little bit easier to see what you're doing if your kiln is up a little bit, you know, so you can look across, because otherwise, you know, if you're looking too much from the top, you're just seeing the top and you need to see the seam along the side. So we built this little erection. So I guess we're gonna do the cute little acorn first. We're gonna pop him in there. And when we were looking at the sides, like this side fits really beautifully. The other side, I think will need a little bit of zhuzh, but just like we've talked about before, if it basically fits, it's better to just tack it in a spot. We'll take it out, we'll take a little dowel and just gently rub the seam a little to make sure they're touching really nicely. Because I mean, look, in a perfect world, you put it in there, everything is gorgeous, the seam's tight, and woo, you just, you know, fuse the whole thing. And that's super cool, and it does happen. But do not be horrified and dismayed if indeed you need to do that little pause and zhuzh it a little bit, okay? Because again, perfect is great, but you know, fuckery is actually the norm, so you just always be prepared for that. All right, so I'm gonna pick this up lovingly and place it in the kiln. Like so. And like so. And remember, if you haven't absorbed this lesson yet, if you put it in the kiln and it's still in place and you say to yourself, I'm gonna just move it, that's the devil talking. Leave it where it is. Because I guarantee if I took that and tried to shift it a little bit, they would move, okay? So just wherever you put it down, just know in your heart that is the perfect place. There is no more perfect place. Okay, so I got a 0 tip, which is what I like to use. I'm gonna use the lid to cast a shadow a little bit. You know, the darker it is, the easier it is to see. It also helps to hold the heat in a little bit. So let me spark this baby up.
And that's
a 0 tip, yeah. It's just like when you're fusing a bezel or you're fusing tubing closed. You want to use a 0 tip, which is like just kind of a nice pointy flame. Use the lid to cast a shadow. And we're going to start making circles because we got to get this whole thing really good and hot, just like when you're fusing a bezel, so that like it gets a little orangey and then the seam is going to start to glow brighter than everything else because you're not ready to fuse until that happens.
so it's happening.
Yeah, you see that, how the seam, and I'm gonna go a little bit more because I think the background's still a little hazy, but that's what you're looking for. You see that? When it's actually, when it's nice and hot, it's not that hard to see what's cooking. You see what I mean? So I'm gonna start right in that spot where the seam is most narrow and fuse it a little bit to tack it. It's just like with soldering. It's really just getting that first attachment that's the most persnickety. You know what I mean? Once it's attached and isn't gonna move on you, things are a lot more relaxing. See that, how it got dark and filled in a little bit? Go towards little hiney a little bit. Who doesn't like a gold acorn hiney? Now, if you come around, look toward the front here, and I will say, Alexis, come on over in here and take a look. I'm gonna heat up the front, and you'll notice right near one of the tips, there's like a little more space. I'm just gonna heat it up and get it hot so you can see it. If you have a space like that, it's better to pause, and we're gonna take it out, let it cool, and press that together a little bit. Do you see what I mean? Can you see that kind of large-ish gap? You know, right in there, right at the end. I mean, don't get me wrong, I could probably get some stuff to happen here. But you see what I'm saying? That's a little too wide, that's a little wider of a space than you want to really try to fuse. Because if it's too wide, it's not gonna melt together, it'll just melt apart. So I'm gonna just pause, I'm gonna take it out, we'll let it cool for a sec, we'll take the dowel, we'll give it a little, and then we'll pop it back in there and fuse the rest.
Push together.
Yeah, we're gonna push it together a little bit, but I just wanna kind of show that.
Okay, let me see it.
So in case you couldn't really see it so clearly in the kiln, we took it out, we're letting it cool. You see how there's like a little more space right there? You know, a space like that, it's no big deal. We're gonna take it down, we're gonna gently press it together, and then, you know, I'll let you take another shot of it so people can see it. It's no big deal. It's just, when it's wide like that, it won't fuse. And if you try to push it, it'll just melt, and then you'll be super pissed. Susie just gives me like this horrified look like, oh, no. Exactly. So you should never touch a piece to see if it's still hot, because that's just silly. Never do that. So I'm going to use the dowel, and basically this is like one of those things, like whatever amount of force you're imagining, cut it by 1,000,000,000, because it's like burnishing, but just ever so lightly. It really doesn't take much. If you get in there and push hard, things are going to get funky, and not in a good way. Funky in the pejorative sense. Okay, I'm going to give it just like I usually just kind of like run down the seam a little bit. It's a little bit like that zipper method, you know, when we're doing tubing, where we're kind of pressing toward each other. You all right over there? Excellent. She's lost in her own world.
No comment.
I'm gonna just hold it for a second, see if you can see that that's touching better now. Mm-hmm. It looks tighter.
Yep.
And I'll put it in the kiln, I'll do some fusing, and if there's still an area that gives us any shit, again, we'll take it out, you know, we'll press it together a little bit. And a lot of times, like once it's tacked, you can put it back on the stand if you want, but you really don't have to. You can throw it right in the middle, you know what I mean? Because it's not gonna come apart. The great thing is when I say that, Susie's eyebrows just go like whoop, like a foot up on her head. I love it. She doesn't say anything though. She's very genteel about it. She just looks horrified. Sometimes you have to pull these apart a little bit because I don't want to like squish your cute little guy. You see what I mean? Like you can put him right in the little nut in the middle or wherever. It's just that way I can position it however I need to get to the seam. But you can still use the tripod. I mean the trivet thing there, whatever makes you happy. Okay, get it nice and hot. Oh, fusing is the most fun. So you see, there's your hazy phase, and then you just keep going, and you'll notice the haze will start to disappear. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the seam starts to become much more clear. Mm. Okay, let's give it a little of this, and a little of that. Roll it over here a little bit. See that? Beautiful. Look at that. Look at that beautiful acorn. So it just needs to be, you know, a little sanded and spiffed up. And we'll be putting jump rings on. It'll be a gorgeous pendant before you know it. Oh, look at that little acorn. Oh, it looks so good. Fantastic.